In operations in the Central Highlands, when we were moving out and engaging the enemy in the jungle, it was primarily AK-47s and AK-50 machine guns. If they had other weapons, I was not familiar with it. Sometimes they would have small mortars that they would use, depending on the size of the enemy element that we had encountered. When we were in larger firefights, battalion or larger firefights, it was not uncommon for the enemy to have rockets. They used a lot of B-40 rockets, which is a shoulder-held rocket. Fortunately, they're not very accurate, but they do cause a lot of damage. Or at least they weren't accurate in that day. I'm sure by now they've improved on them. We would when we were in large encounters, we would have a lot of rockets, mortars would hit us, AK-47s, machine guns, and often they would be close enough that they would throw grenades at us.
Tell me about the Hueys and you're assisting possibly with the wounded as medevacs would come in, or as gunships or whoever had to evacuate the wounded. Tell me what you remember about helping with any of that.
Again, depending on where you were in the perimeter of an engagement, the helicopters would come in on that side of the perimeter that was not receiving fire. And if I happened to be on that side of the perimeter in which the medevac chopper came in, then I would help put the wounded on the ship.
Did that happen a lot with you, or just a couple times, or remember helping out?
You know, I kind of blocked that out. I mean, I know that I did it, but I kind of blocked that out.
Have you seen a movie that has come close to what you experienced there?
We Were Soldiers is the closest to my experience.
And what part of the movie in particular maybe was realistic?
There was not anything in that movie that I have not seen or experienced. Everything in that movie I have experienced, including having the enemy stand right on top of you in the middle of the night. I've experienced that as well.
That was your first day with the bunker?
No, they overran us that time, but I was out in the jungles and the enemy walked over us, and I wished I could tell you when it was. I just can't remember. It all kind of runs together. I'm really looking forward to discovering the chain of events and when we were, wherever we were. I just started looking up some guys that were with my unit and to get their recollection on what happened. I came home and I don't know if it's a preservation mechanism, I'm not sure what it is, but I tried not to and to remember. There was too much, I think.
How do you think Vietnam changed you, Jerry? I mean, obviously, did it give you a better perspective of life? Did you get cynical when you came home? Or now, so many years later, you're dealing with post-traumatic stress? Or just give me a little bit about that.
I was happy to come home. I was glad it was over. I thought a lot about the guys that were still there. My experience was such that I wasn't going to go back. Just wasn't going to go back. But I understand why guys do. I came home from Vietnam and I was happy all the time. I laughed a lot, I smiled a lot, I didn't get mad about anything. There just wasn't anything on America to be mad about. I'm still that way. I mean, it isn't that I don't have the feelings of anger, because that's a natural emotion, but you know, I look at everything that happens to me and I compare it to what I experienced, and there just isn't anything that happens here that has such significance that it's worth being upset about.
How about transitioning from combat one moment and then a civilian life? I mean, was there a transition there?
I was very, very fortunate. I was very fortunate. In July of 1968, I was taken out of the jungle and I was moved down to a place called Phan Rang. So I only spent 6 months in the jungle. And then I went down to an R&R beach called Phan Rang, and I spent the rest of my tour on this R&R beach, where I had a lot of And the story of how that happened is very important, I think. I'll share that with you in a second. Where I was on the beach, I met people who had not been in combat. I met Air Force guys and others who had no idea what combat was about. So I had several months to socialize and kind of adjust to what it would be like being in a social atmosphere. So I know there are guys who were in combat one day and in the streets of Phoenix a week later, of America a week later, and that's not a good transition. My biological father had been in Korea and, he'd been in the Pacific in World War II and then Korea. And he came home with something that people didn't understand at that time, and it was post-traumatic stress disorder, but nobody knew what it was. And he was violent and drank. And my mother did something, I was 5 years old at this time, or 6, maybe 6. But my mother did something that was unacceptable behavior at that time. She divorced him for the safety of herself and her 2 little children, myself and my younger brother. I had not seen my father in about 15 years. My grandmother, my biological father's mom, found out that I was in Vietnam in harm's way. And a father I had not seen for 15 years re-enlisted in the service, filled out all the paperwork, put himself in harm's way in Vietnam to get me out of the field. And I just found out about that about 4 years ago. And that was kind of the beginning of my need to find out what goes on. What happened there? Where was I? I mean, these kinds, if my son were there, I would go back in a second. And I understand that. But I hadn't seen this man in 15 years. And I saw him about 2 years ago, and he said it was the only thing he had to give me. He had nothing else for me because he's not a rich man. He doesn't have anything. He's an American throwaway. Thank you for your heroism. Now leave us alone. And he lives alone out in Oklahoma, and it's sad. It's sad. But that's what he did for me, and that's why I ended up getting out of the jungle. Nobody knew why I got out of the field. I didn't know why I got out. I was out on an operation with a recon team. Helicopter came out and got me. I thought that something bad had happened stateside because there were, what could you do wrong in the jungle to go to jail for? I wasn't being arrested. So I thought I know that when a parent dies or something, that they would take the guys out of the Red Cross and take you out of the field, and you would come home for 30 days to be here for the funeral and whatever was happening stateside. And that's what I believed happened. But once I ended up down in Cameron Bay and was reassigned to another unit, that's when I knew I wasn't going home, but no one knew why I had been, no one knew why I had been reassigned. Kind of a side note here. You were asking me about my feelings and what had happened to me. I had a helicopter pick me up in the field, in the jungle in the Central Highlands. It took me back to LZ Jane. At LZ Jane there was a Chinook, that's a helicopter with 2 blades, a bigger cargo type, and it flew me down to Phu Bai. At Phu Bai I got on an airplane. Each time I got off, when I got off of the helicopter that brought me from the jungle back to LZ Jane, there was an officer. And he told me I was to get on that helicopter. So I went over and got on the helicopter. I got off of the helicopter in Phu Bai, and there was another officer standing there. And he said, "There's a plane waiting for you." So I went over and got on this plane, and it took off, and I landed in Cameron Bay. And when I got in Cameron Bay, there was a Jeep with 2 MPs sitting on it, and they were waiting for me. So now I still have all my I have my backpack. I'm ready for battle. I mean, I haven't turned anything in or given anybody anything. I'm ready for battle. And the MPs put me in the Jeep and said, "Let's get something to eat, and we'll take you over to the company commander after a while." So I went to a mess hall. This is the first time in 6 months that I'd had hot food on a table. And I went through, and this was the time that I knew I was not well. This was that defining moment that I knew that I had turned into an animal. I went through this line with all my combat stuff on, watching as these guys would scoop this food out and put it on my plate. Everybody in the place was spit, shined, and polished. It was an MP unit. They were all looking good, except me. And I remember looking at the guy who had put some mashed potatoes on my plate, and when he put this spoonful on my plate and told me to move on. And I remember when I looked at him, he didn't say anything. He just picked up the spoon and gave me some more, and he said, "Do you want more?" I didn't have to say anything to him. I don't know what was in my eyes, but I visibly saw him scared. Now I'm at a table, and I have every cold drink they make. I have Kool-Aid and milk and cold water and sodas, and I had everything in front of me, and I had this giant plate of food. These 3 MPs came and sat with me, and I found myself holding my arm around my food down, and I remember this so well. I had a chicken leg, and I was scooping mashed potatoes with my fingers into my mouth. And there was nobody in this place talking. They were all staring at me. And that was the time I thought to myself, what has happened to me? What has happened to me? And I pushed the food away, and a guy said, "Come on, we'll go get you some clean clothes. The mess hall's open all day." So he took me over to the shower place, and he went and got some clean clothes for me, and I showered, and I used the entire bar of soap, and I washed my hair, and all the shampoo I used all the shampoo, and I had hot water, and I just stood there trying to rationalize what has happened to me.